Welcome to The Whole Pineapple. I'm Ruby Boris.
And I'm Ann Judge. The Whole Pineapple is a podcast about wellness focused around fertility. And on these weekly mini episodes, we bring you bite-sized ideas for you to snack on.
Like breathing exercises, book reviews. Maybe we'll review some scientific research, or we'll share some wellness and fertility stories from our listeners.
So if you're looking for a tip or a trick related to your fertility and well-being, then you've come to the right place.
Let's dig in.
Welcome back to The Whole Pineapple on our snack. We are here on our last snack of the year, which is so exciting. We are welcoming back again Jamie Mankengoff for one last mindful moment. Did I say your name wrong? Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. End of the year. Jamie Mamanga, is that right?
Yeah, you got it.
There we go. It's only taken me 50 snack episodes. So welcome back again, Jamie, for a mindful moment as we wrap out the end of the year, as well as the end of season 1 of Whole Pineapple.
Thank you so much for having me again. I just can't believe this is the last one of the year. Kind of snuck up on me.
It did. And, we were trying to talk about how to end it, and you came up with the perfect idea. So tell me what you thought we could reflect on for this last episode.
Well, we were talking about anxiety and how that is so common in this journey and, getting stuck in those intrusive thoughts, that sort of goes along with that. But we were also talking about, holding hope and how challenging that can be in this journey. So I think that's what we sort of landed on in the end. But I think that includes that anxiety
And
piece.
you know that we made Hope our mascot, right? That Hope is our little pineapple mascot. That was the name that won for our whole pineapple thing. So I've been carried around. Did you not see it? This is our pineapple.
I've seen the pineapple, but I didn't know the name. I must have missed that.
Yes, the listeners voted, and the name is Hope. So it makes perfect sense to end the year talking about hope. And yeah, you're right. It's such a hard thing for a fertility patient because it's one of those cliche things that people often like to say for you. And it can be really hard sometimes to feel hopeful, or it can feel like you don't want to feel hopeful because you're kind of protecting yourself. And like allowing you to get your hopes up can make it seem like you're just setting yourself up for disappointment again. So
absolutely. There's always like an element of self-preservation in there that where we're trying to, and I think we're geared this way as a species, right? To be kind of looking out for the tough things out there. I mean, It's how we survived as a species when we had to leave the cave. We needed to kind of know what the dangers were, how to protect ourselves. And so I think that there's some carryover that we still do this in a lot of ways. We're still kind of thinking of what can happen and trying to protect ourselves.
I think of Finding Nemo in the beginning where it's like you go out and then back in and out and back in. And sometimes if you want to do it 4 times, you could just go out and then back in if it doesn't feel safe. So
yeah, absolutely. And so holding hope can be really challenging. And I think one of the things that's really challenging about it is the way that we tend to hold hope around pregnancy in society. We tend to be very outcome-based in the way that we think about pregnancy, out in kind of like the non-infertility world. It's kind of like, I'm going to try to have a baby. Oop, life baby, right? But when you're in this journey, you just become so acutely aware of all those, and sometimes painfully aware of all those sort of like data points in between those things. And so that hope can actually be, like, oh, it's going to happen. It can be a little bit what I call toxic positivity or kind of like toxic hopefulness that isn't super helpful.
That's such a good point because I feel like when I reflect back on what some of the things that were really hardest for me when I was in the middle of treatment, it was sort of like the blind ignorance of other people that would just like post a photo of their home pregnancy test on social media and just like assume that was all going to go to plan. And I wanted to be like, do you want me to email you all the things that could still go wrong? And so, but it's like, I guess I was kind of jealous of other people's hope, the fact that they just had nothing but expectations that things would go well. And maybe that was really hard to see because I wasn't letting myself have those feelings or expectations, because when things haven't gone as planned, you sort of start being more guarded and more cautious. I mean, as you said, that's a super normal coping technique. So how do you deal with that? How do you kind of find the balance between you need to have hope or we wouldn't keep doing all of this, but how do you do it in a way that's going to be helpful for you and deal with some of the stuff that may not always be helpful from others?
First of all, finding ways to hold hope that are more realistic and truthful that you can like rest peacefully in. Because some of the things that people say in this journey to sort of infuse us with hopefulness sort of have the opposite impact. I want to go back a second what you said because it really triggered something for me where, I think that one of the places that people can struggle is that loss of innocence and that loss of that
Mm-hmm.
ability to be just sort of like, yay, this is just going to
Mm-hmm.
work. And I think that there's a lot of different things like that that get stolen from you in fertility journeys. And I think people grieve those. They can feel some jealousy around watching other people be able to just sort of blindly feel happiness and not have a care in the world or a worry in the world from their perspective, from what you can see on the outside. Me working with a lot of people who,
Oh,
are trying to
yeah.
get pregnant, like usually there is some element of or layer of anxiety in there, regardless of kind of what past conception looks like. That's not always super obvious in those social media posts for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing too, is I think people are sometimes so focused on the initial step and you think, well, once I cross barrier X, then I'll feel happy and relaxed. But life isn't like that. I mean, I have teenagers now that I still constantly worry about all of these
Mm,
things. And I probably would have been like this to a certain extent, no matter what. But I feel like when things have not gone the way you expected, it's just sort of natural to keep up that guard sort of for everything else that might also be surprising for you. So, yeah, that loss of innocence, I think, is a really good way of putting it because
mm,
there's so many things you didn't know. I mean, I talk about that every day when I'm meeting with patients and we're having hard conversations. I was like, did you ever think you would know this much about how your body works? Like the fact that the education we get on sex ed is so remedial. And then all of a sudden you're starting to understand hormone levels and, uterine anomalies and all these things that you
mm,
didn't realize were even a possibility. It
mhm.
can be sometimes hard to find the hope in a situation where suddenly it feels like there are a lot of forces that are not supporting you towards your goal.
Exactly. And so, again, going back to kind of what people say sometimes to infuse us with that hopefulness where they're like, "Oh, it's going to work out. I just know it." And I've been guilty of saying these things, where I just
Hmm.
know it's going to work for you. And I think part of that comes from, people don't know a lot about fertility journeys. They haven't had to gather all of the information that you've had to gather in this journey. And also, people are really uncomfortable with sort of ongoing unresolved grief. And so people
Hmm.
want to make it better, right? Like for you, for
Hmm.
themselves, for that moment, like they want to try to make it better. But the problem is you can't rest peacefully in that because you don't have that crystal ball that says this is all going to work out. You don't have access to that. And of course, you want to be able to hold hope in that way too, that like, oh yeah, it's all going to just work out just fine.
Right.
But that invalidates what you are actually sitting with, which is uncertainty and a lack of control.
Definitely. Like, shout out to one of our past episodes. I got my lovely husband to record his patient journey experience, which involves talking about male factor. And so for us, that was one of my personal things when people would be like, well, it just takes one sperm. I want to be like, it actually doesn't just take one. It's more complicated than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, like people are trying to be hopeful for you. They're trying to be like, well, you're saying there's a chance. Here's what I think. And you're right, that can almost sometimes make you feel worse, but you don't want them to be negative either, because then you're going to feel like everybody is negative. So, how do you suggest kind of redirecting those conversations when people are saying things to you that you don't find are supportive?
I think I talked about this in our last snack of being kind of proactive in conversations with friends and family. So if there's people that you know that this is going to be coming up with, they might be checking in on you or that you want to be able to talk with about this sort of thing because they're a support for you in your life. It might be helpful to have proactive conversations because those are going to be a lot less charged than reactive conversations. And you can set more appropriate boundaries in a way that's probably going to feel more comfortable for you and be, more protective of your relationship and not leave you feeling exposed or, maybe resentful in the same way. Resolve.org, I always like to point people to this. They have articles about how can family and friends support people through infertility journeys. Like there's lots of wonderful resources on that website. But, I think sending those to friends and family can be really helpful too. Just like, hey, this is so common. They're writing articles about this. I thought I'd share with you. Or, I spoke with an expert at SRM and they kind of let me know that this is really common and you're one of my support people and I wanted to let you know. just kind of setting that framework for people of like, hey, this is what's going to feel really helpful. Either it's really helpful when you check in with me around this, like that makes me feel really cared about. Thank you so much for doing that. Or don't be afraid to do that. Because some people really do want that. It lets them know that people are thinking and caring about this really difficult thing that they're going through. For other people, it's really triggering. And so they might actually need the opposite. They might need to be able to have a conversation with a loved one that's more like, in this moment, this is sort of a tender experience. It really is helpful for me to sort of be in control of this information. And you're such an important person in my life that you're going to be one of the first to know if something's coming up, that if there's information to share, like you're a person I'm going to share it with for sure. But if I could be in control of sharing that when I have information to share and when I'm comfortable sharing it, that would be so helpful for me. And just knowing that you're thinking about me, that you are there when I need you, when the time is right, like that means everything to me. So just kind of, again, kind of setting those boundaries with people and letting people know how they can support you in a way that feels good for you.
Definitely. I think that was something that I did. I kind of finally had to tell people like, hey, if I have something good to share, I'll tell everybody. So please don't ask me how things went or if I've gotten my results. Yeah, it's like, I'll tell you. Like you said, they're checking in from a place of love and support, but it doesn't always feel that way if you haven't had the outcome you were hoping for. So, and the last thing too is I feel like it's been interesting for me working here for 15 years because I am actually a much more hopeful person for all my patients than I was in the beginning, because that long view of realizing that it's so common for treatment to not work right away. Like even when you move to something really intensive like IVF, and even if you have a normal embryo, like there's still a bigger than people think bucket where it doesn't work the first cycle, but it might work the next cycle. And people that stay in treatment and keep pursuing options, sometimes options they hadn't initially considered, they usually are going to end up in a place that they want to be. It's just you don't know exactly what the time frame is going to be or what is going to be involved in it. But a lot of times the reason that people stop treatment is because of that emotional strain. They just can't handle putting themselves through that roller coaster of emotions and again being hopeful if they don't know if it's going to work out. And so that's why we're doing this podcast, to be able to have people feel more supportive, have places to get that information, because I think if you can keep up the right kind of hope and stay able to keep trying, I really do see good odds for almost everybody.
It doesn't always work, but I think, the majority of the time it really does. We just never know how long that journey is going to be or what it's going to look like. Like you said, on this podcast, I've described this as a race, right? And you don't know if you're on a 5K or an ultra marathon, like what is it, right? And what makes those races doable is they know like where the end is and, the mile markers and where the hard parts are.
You think you're running a marathon, but it's really a triathlon, and someone hands you a bike and you're like, I didn't practice the bike. And then they're like, now you have to swim. You're like, I don't know how to swim. I'm not prepared for this. So
I'm going to steal that, Anne. So how do we hold hope differently in this journey? And I think that goes back to anxiety. We were talking about anxiety at the very beginning. And what anxiety is your brain playing a nasty game of ping pong between the things in the past that were painful that you couldn't control and the things in the future that you worry will be painful and you can't control. And the only time you have control is in the here and now, which is part of why we've been doing these mindful moments all year, is because we want to help people kind of sit in the here and now where they do have some elements of control. And so finding places that you can actually hold hope. So one thing that we were talking about before, one of the things that people say is, like, it's all going to work out. I just know it. It's all going to be okay. And one thing we were talking about before we started recording is that maybe that's not something you can rest peacefully in, because you don't know if it's all going to work out or if it's all going to be okay. But making sure you know and find ways that you are ensuring throughout this process that you will be okay, and being able to rest peacefully in that. Like that is something that you can sit in and rest peacefully in, but you also need to be sort of proactive in making sure you're taking care of yourself in a way that's going to ensure that you are going to be okay and that you are okay in this journey.
That's perfect. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. As you said, that crystal ball is what, if we had like the magic wand that would just tell everybody what the outcome is. I mean, that uncertainty is what's so hard, but you do know that you are going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
That you're not going to always feel that ping pong and that anxiety you are right now. Like, you are going to be okay at the end of this, I think is a perfect thing to end on, is our hope. And yeah, let's reflect on everything. Any last thoughts?
I think also just knowing that this will end, this can feel like sort of forever when you're in it and sort of never ending. But the truth is no matter how long your journey is, it will end. And this is just a short period of time. This is a chapter in your life, and it can't last forever. That's another way you can rest peacefully, is like, okay, I can hang in there for a chapter, right? Like, this isn't forever in my life.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I'll go quiet and we will listen to your last mindful moment of 2022.
As we look toward ending one year and beginning a new one, we often spend time reflecting on things that happened in the past, or that didn't happen, and on circumstances we want to change in the future. As humans, our brains tend to focus more prominently on the negative, which developed naturally as a tool for protection and self-preservation. As a consequence, we can sometimes forget to water the seeds of positivity that are also present. So in today's mindfulness exercise, we're going to focus on gratitude, or the practice of appreciative joy. Another way to think about this practice is simply showing up for happiness or contentment with a caring presence. As you train the mind to rejoice in happiness, you gain so many benefits. You feel more fulfilled by joy, recognize happiness more easily in your life, and train your mind to treat happiness as an important experience. So find a comfortable posture and invite in relaxation from the beginning of your practice. You can be seated or lay down, whatever feels most comfortable for you. As you begin to breathe, appreciate the life offered from each inhalation. With each exhalation, let go of any tension you may be holding in your mind or body. Now begin to bring to mind a time in which you recently experienced happiness. It may be something small, like seeing a friend, watching a sunset, or the simple joy of lying down at night. Once you have something, allow yourself to really feel that experience of contentment. With the intention of cultivating gratitude, offer yourself a few phrases of appreciative joy. Keeping that memory in your mind, offer these phrases. May my happiness continue. May my happiness grow. May I be present for the joy. May I appreciate the joy in my life. If your experience feels more like contentment or ease, you can substitute the words that resonate most with you. You know your own experience, so please be true to yourself. Offer these phrases silently in your head, finding a rhythm with the practice. Focus your attention on the words. The intention of appreciating the happiness and the feeling of contentment from your memory. After a few moments, release the memory and the phrases from your mind. Now, bring to mind somebody else in your life who has experienced some happiness recently. Picture this person in your mind, smiling as you observe their joy. And as you did with yourself, offer phrases of gratitude. Rejoice as much as possible in their happiness, and offer these phrases. May your happiness continue. May your happiness grow. May I be present for your joy. I am happy for you. When the mind wanders, come back to the phrases. You can return to the visualization of this person smiling to bring up the happiness and start with the phrases again. Please feel free to continue to sit with this experience of happiness for others and happiness for yourself for as long as you would like. And when you're ready, return to your day with increased contentment and gratitude. Namaste.